Mr. Speaker, mental health is an issue of deep concern to all Australians. It's a national tragedy that we lose so many people to suicide and that so many people live a life of quiet desperation. Tonight I say, we hear you and we are with you. This issue demands our ongoing attention and resources. We must work together to combat youth suicide as a national priority. In this budget, the government will invest $461 million in Australia's most significant youth mental health and suicide prevention strategy. 30 new Headspace centres, reduced waiting lists, more support for Indigenous youth through mentoring and peer support, treatment for early psychosis, a perinatal mental health program, and extra counselling for communities who have suffered from natural disasters. All of this is about looking after each other. It reflects the very best of Australia and its values.
So here are all the details behind the mental health spending that the government's going to introduce during 2019-2020 budget. Please pause the video and take a look for yourselves. So let's get started on this cost-benefit analysis of mental health spending within the Australian economy. What's great about this measure is the fact that majority of these fundings, about $461 million, is just spent on the youth, mental health and suicide prevention. There'll be more places for people to seek out help, the waiting times are being reduced, and they're even spending money on preventative measures to ensure people do not get stuck into the hole that they're currently in. Especially with the economic shock that has occurred due to the COVID-19 crisis, we're starting to see a lot more people suffering from depression, anxiety, and even stress compared to the usual levels that we've seen in the past. And what's even more alarming is the amount of people who wish they were dead, especially amongst the 18 to 24-year-old bracket.
Fergus Patterson knows the agony of mental illness.
I was feeling really trapped and alone in the world.
He'd black out on alcohol to mask the pain, diagnosed with depression at just 15.
I was having a lot of feelings of self-harm.
He's far from alone. The Productivity Commission has a dark assessment.
Mental health and suicide are among the biggest challenges confronting Australia.
So why is the Productivity Commission getting involved in this conversation? Well, funnily enough, economics is everywhere. You can't avoid it. Every situation has an economic impact, and mental health is not an exception to the rule. Productivity refers to how much output can be produced within a given set of inputs. So productivity increases when more output is produced with the same amount of inputs, or the same amount of outputs are produced with less inputs being involved in the process. So I want you to think now back to your sporting teams or maybe your video game teams such as Fortnite, and just remember a time where someone wasn't playing or performing well and they start to choke. How did their mental well-being influence their gameplay overall? For example, when their performance was going down, did the team rally behind them and start supporting them to encourage them to get back on their feet and ignore the past and just focus on what's happening right now? In this situation, you probably found out that their overall performance improved, and as a team, you guys overall did a lot better in that game. Versus the other option, where you start telling them off and telling them they're crap and just constantly telling them that they can't do a good enough job. How does that impact the overall team's performance? I'm assuming very negatively, because that's usually what happens to me. Or how about when a teacher's having a bad day? Does that negatively impact your ability to learn during that day? Versus a teacher who's friendly, happy, and seems to be in a good mood? I'm sure we've all experienced this before, and I'm no exception to that rule. So hopefully with that example, you can kind of see how mental health has an impact on the workforce. Because if people turn up to work and they're sad or they're depressed or they're just feeling down about themselves, it's going to overall impact our ability to produce goods and services for society. If there's less goods and services being produced, there'll be less access for goods and services for us, which might mean we have to spend more money in order to get the things that we really want. At the same time, business costs have increased because there's less people producing the amount of goods that they used to, which results in lower profits and less tax revenue being collected from them to the government. You also got to remember that if businesses are experiencing lower profits, they're probably going to just start firing people or reducing their hours in order to maintain their profits at the same time. So this negative spiral of events could even lead to more mental health issues in the future, like what we're experiencing now with COVID-19. Overall, if there's less money flowing through the economy, the living standards of all Australians will be reduced, materially and non-materially.
Mental illness in Australia is claiming 8 lives and costing $500 million a day. It is the stark assessment from a damning new report, which has called for, among other things, babies and toddlers to be tested.
1 in 5 Australians suffer mental health problems and 3/4 of cases emerge before the age of 25. 1 million people go undiagnosed.
This is a major problem affecting not just health but productivity.
Breakdowns and suicide costs the economy up to $51 billion a year, with another $130 billion added from reduced life expectancy.
After hearing this, $737 million spent over the next 7 years for mental health sounds like a very good investment to me. Especially when all the issues of mental health cost our economy $180 billion a year. Hopefully through this additional spending that they're putting through in this program, we might see that $180 billion reduced by half, a quarter, or maybe gone completely. Well, that's being very optimistic. Think of all the non-material living standard impacts that this policy will have. You'll get a lot less people stressed, anxious, might even see more social cohesion, and treating every Australian like one big massive family where we all love each other. Who knows, maybe I'm just being too optimistic, or I've been brainwashed from what I've seen in Japan. Either way, we should see our material living standards improve, because now people are going to work, more things are being produced, things will be a lot cheaper, more people will have jobs, the government will get more tax revenue. It's a beautiful system for everyone if this works out.
That underscores the need for early intervention and preventative effort.
To address that, substantial change is recommended, including specialist teachers in schools and screening babies and toddlers.
A novel suggestion, and one that we will have to look at in detail.
Other key recommendations include monitoring those who have attempted suicide, better access to treatment and housing, and pooling state and federal resources to deliver seamless services.
So it's easy to understand and people can get the services they need.
The government will await the final report due next year before formally responding, but it's aware there are many problems which need fixing to save lives.
Together, we can always do more.
Fergus did and sought help. Now he's helping others.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Jonathan Kersley, 9 News.
As beneficial as this policy seems, I have to play devil's advocate and start looking at the negative sides to this argument. First off, $737 million over the course of 7 years might just be a small drop in the ocean compared to the actual resources that need to be pulled and spent in order to resolve this issue. We might not be simply spending enough. It's great to see that they're doing targeted approaches for early screening, so they can get to the problem early and before it becomes a massive and big problem in the future. But why isn't the government spending or targeting preventative measures to stop it from actually becoming an issue in the first place? To me, I think prevention is still better than a cure, isn't it? I don't know, you tell me. I mean, 2/3 of our population is either overweight or obese. We also got this huge problem with sugar. The amount that we're consuming is just firing dopamine like there's no tomorrow. And this is causing young children to develop weird habits which could possibly lead to mental health problems in the future. People aren't consuming enough vegetables in their diet. Exercise is pretty much out the window for most people. Like, there's all these things that could be done to prevent mental health issues from ever becoming a problem. Then we have social media producing, unrealistic expectations of what people should be looking like or should be acting like or how they should be living their lives. And don't get me started on the social cohesion ramifications from social media. So yeah, maybe this money is better well spent off in order to prevent issues rather than targeting and fixing problems as they occur. Well, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. As before, I'm not going to leave you with a conclusion. You can determine your own. Hopefully this all gives you an idea or inspiration to help you get through Benchmark 2. Good luck.